This is a piece of acrylic we're putting the motherboard on, and this is a gigabyte motherboard, Z77XUD3H, and I already drilled the holes into the acrylic, and I actually put the motherboard screws into the acrylic, and now I'm screwing the motherboard to the screws that are in the acrylic, as if you would do inside of an actual case. Now, after aligning it a little bit more, I'm going to tightening up these screws, because as you tighten it, the screw underneath can actually spin. So I'm going to hold it. I hold it with the pliers and then I tighten it up. Make sure that the motherboard is tightly secured to the acrylic sheet. Now the motherboard is completely tightened to the acrylic sheet, and that is the power supply unit 800. There's the Vengeance RAM, the i7-3700K processor, 16 gigs of RAM, and we're using a Corsair GS800 power supply. That was the graphics card, and that's the OZZ SSD, one of them. We used a OCZ 128 gigabyte and Intel 128 gigabyte SSD, and for the main drive we used 180 gigabyte SSD. And for storage, we used a 2 terabyte. This is all of the products lined up that I'm going to be using. As you can see, the graphics card, the motherboard, that's the DVD Blu-ray disc player. And I'm going to start putting these all into the motherboard here shortly, unwrapping and then grounding myself to the motherboard. The water cooling, Corsair water cooling system, the EVGA graphics card, the 3 SSD hard drives, and the power supply unit have all been installed, as well as the two 2 terabyte 7200 RPM Seagate drives. Right now, I'm unwrapping the 180 gigabyte SSD Intel, which is 6 gigabits per second. And it states that it gets drive speeds of 520 megabytes write and 480 megabytes of read. So just disconnecting an OCZ, because at first I was going to make that the main drive. drive, but I decided to make the Intel 180 the main drive. And use the two SSDs as backups. Zip tying all the cables and making sure that there's a good flow for air, for cooling. Zip tying this hard drive to the 2 terabyte hard drives, and I am cleaning up all the SATA cables as well as the power supply unit cables. I have a 3 screen system here. The middle screen is a touch screen running Windows 8, and as you can see, I can move around and use different programs to actually draw right on screen, which is a nice effect with Windows 8. And if I'm doing multiple things, I can use the other two to, like if I'm using Photoshop, let's say, I can put Photoshop over to one of the left-hand side screens and manipulate other programs from the opposite side screens. So like for instance here, you can see Photoshop running on the left-hand screen and me running through the pictures on the touch screen. And now I just brought Photoshop to the center screen.